let me know when you're ready.
Okay.
William Whitaker's older half-brother, Hamlin Snell, a politically inclined attorney, left his and Billy's Sarasota homestead to return to Tallahassee after his election as state senator for Hillsborough County from the Manatee District. Snell later rose to become president of the Florida Senate in 1854, 9 years after Florida had achieved statehood. Snell rightfully should be regarded as the father of Manatee County, for it was through his influence that the legislation was introduced and passed while he was president of the Florida Senate, creating Manatee County from the southern half of Hillsborough on January 9, 1855. A year later, Snell would return to Tallahassee representing Manatee County in the Florida House of Representatives, whereupon he was immediately selected Speaker of the House by his peers in 1856. It would be another 125 years before Manatee County Solon would again be named Speaker of the Florida House of Representatives, when Terracea Island's Ralph Hayman achieved this distinction in 1981 and again in 1982. Although Snell served as president of the Florida Senate in 1854, he was serving from Hillsborough County, so the honor of being Manatee County's first president of the Florida Senate goes to Senator John McKay, a Republican of Bradenton, who was chosen by his peers to preside for the legislative year of 2000. At the time the United States acquired Florida from Spain in 1821, following the signing of the 1819 Adams-Onis Treaty, the federal government reserved all of Florida's offshore barrier islands for potential military fortifications in the case of the war. And to that end, I might point out at this juncture that Robert E. Lee went over to Egmont Key and surveyed Egmont Key and Fort DeSoto area for the federal government in 1829. Thus, at the conclusion of the Second Seminole Indian War in 1842, settlers were prevented from filing homestead claims on the barrier islands of Longboat, Anna Maria, Siesta, Casey, Egmont, Passage Keys, confining homestead activity to the mainland. This ban was not lifted until sometime in the 1880s, and even then, in some instances, the federal government never surrendered title to all of these offshore islands. A local example is Egmont Key, which to this day is still entirely owned by the United States federal government. As a result, it wasn't until 1885 that Longboat Key's first homesteader, Thomas W. Mann, moved to the north end of the key on Longboat Inlet or Pass. A native of Shelby County, Indiana, Mann married and moved to Minnesota before the Civil War. He fought in the Union Army and returned to Stern County, Minnesota, St. Cloud, after the war. His wife, Mary, died in 1866 after giving birth to their fifth child. Because of ill health and sickness in the family and the severe cold winters, Mann decided to move his family to Florida. They descended down the Mississippi by boat to New Orleans, where they encountered a group of other families headed to the Manatee River section. The Manns joined them, arriving at the village of Manatee in 1872. A year after the Sarasota postmaster, Massachusetts-born Charles Abbey was murdered by the Sarasota vigilantes in December 1884, the 61-year-old man, a Yankee and a Union Army veteran to boot, moved from his Manatee River home near present-day Braden Castle to the north end of Longboat Key. There is some indication the move was dictated by a desire to avoid the native hostility toward northerners and be left alone on this island paradise where fishing and game were abundant and crops could be grown virtually year-round. A picture exists of a man seated by the palmetto and frond-thatched shack, which is the you've shown, which he had fashioned for his first home in 1886 amid the jungle surroundings that characterized parts of the north end of Longboat Key in the 19th century. Among the trees that rose above the undergrowth and palmettos were cedars, live oaks, and palms. Most all this vegetation and undergrowth would be leveled on the north during the abortive Florida boom of the 1920s, in which land was cleared for building homes and finger-like lots were pumped up behind wooden seawalls. During the frightful yellow fever epidemics that swept Florida in the summers of 1887 and 1888, killing nearly a fifth of the population, man urged his grown children to leave Manatee and bring their families to Longboat to escape the fever. The family legend has it that they did just that and thus escaped the deadly viral disease. Man's grandchildren have left us with a description of the idyllic life then on Longboat Key. Quote, "We would go out early in the morning and gather turtle eggs from the fresh nests. We would turn the turtles on their backs and then choose one for the pot before setting them free to return to the water. We gathered sea grapes and scallops." I imagine today turtle people would be upset about it.
Well, people I think have a hard time imagining Longboat Key as being somewhere where they would grow vegetables and fruit, but out on the islands here, you have like a natural radiator effect.
Yeah.
So during the winter, it actually moderates the winter. So when we get cold fronts that come through, it's actually colder in town or inland. And out here, the water is like 60, 50, 60 degrees, and it actually warms the environment. So it only makes sense that they would grow fruit and vegetables out here.
Under the terms of the United States Homestead Act of 1862, a claimant had to build a home, live on and farm the land for 5 years before receiving title to his claim. Man variously listed as a mechanic and later as a carpenter in the census records, also farmed. He gained title or as they said, proved up on his Longboat Key homestead by August 26, 1891. It encompassed the northernmost 144.47 acres of Longboat Key with frontage skirting along the Gulf of Mexico, Sarasota Bay, and the entire south side of Longboat Pass, or Longboat Inlet, as they sometimes called it. While Thomas Mann was the Longboat Key's first homesteader, the first person to actually acquire title to land on Longboat was William J. Parrott of Kennebunkport, Maine. He purchased 124 acres from the Florida State Board of Education for $1.25 per acre, or a total of $155.89 on May 10th, 1883. Imagine $100.25.
Well, when my ancestor John Sabries bought land down here, everybody in Tampa thought that he was crazy, because they said, "Oh, you're buying just swampland, and there's no,
mosquitoes,
no hospital, there's mosquitoes," and so they couldn't understand, people buying land down here because, they thought Tampa was the latest thing, the city of Tampa. So it's interesting how people looked at it.
Right. The property that Parrott bought was where today's Water Club, Promenade, Beach Place are today, and ran back to Sarasota Bay in today's Bay Isles. And there is no record of Parrott ever living on the property, but evidence he sought to make money reselling it, which he and his wife, who later gained power of attorney, subsequently did. To put it in perspective of the time, Longboat Key was an uninhabited wilderness in gigantic Manatee County, which then was the size of the state of Connecticut, stretching from the Gulf of Mexico clear to the Kissimmee River and Lake Okeechobee, and bounded on the north by the present Manatee-Hillsborough line, and on the south almost to Fort Myers. There were less than 4,000 residents in this mammoth Manatee County. Probably most of them were Indians. The county seat had been moved inland after the Civil War from the community of Manatee, or East Braden, on the south bank of the Manatee River, to Pine Level, which is about 10 miles west of Arcadia. At the time of Parrott's purchase in 1883, Florida's governor was Democrat William D. Bloxam, serving the first of two separate four-year terms. Chester A. Arthur was President of the United States, serving out the last 3 years of James A. Garfield's term after his assassination death on September 19, 1881. 7 years later, Parrott and his wife, Georgette G. Parrott, now living in Boston, Massachusetts, purchased the adjacent 168 acres south along the Gulf and the bay down to New Pass on July 18, 1890, by depositing $210.38 into the registry of the General Land Office of the United States Government in Gainesville, Florida.